Hey, so I know I said I wanted to take it down, but now I actually want to go all the way back up. I really want to understand what you mean. And it was, you said something about, that you said the God that you don't believe in is dead, meaning the mythic God.
Right? The God you don't believe in doesn't exist.
The mythic God does not really exist.
Right.
But then you said, but the God I'm speaking about is the God. You gave it, still kind of gave it a personal face. If I wasn't,
you
kind of said
I could hear you listening at that moment. I could hear that.
Yeah, well, no, I'm not saying this.
Beautiful. Go for it. Go.
I just want to know what you mean, because
beautiful.
This God. It loved you personally and your uniqueness so much that it bestowed you with these
Fantastic.
gifts. And so I want to go, okay, I hear that. Sounds kind of like the mythic God. So I want to know, you obviously mean something different by that, because you don't believe in the mythic God, you just said. So can you take us into what you mean?
That's first of all, I want to just deeply bow and appreciate just the subtlety of your listening and the gorgeousness of the inquiry. So thank you.
Thank you.
So let's just talk about that for a second. And let's maybe start, as you say, let's go back up for a second. Let's talk about the personal and the impersonal. Okay?
Okay.
And then we'll go directly into the divine, into all that is, into God. So when we start our path, right, we go from pre-personal to personal, right? We're babies, pre-personal, and we kind of go into a personal sense of having an identity, as my separate self. That's a natural, healthy development. If you skip that, you're probably or definitely psychotic. Okay, so you got to go from pre-personal to personal. Then as the personal, as you said so eloquently, we kind of think everything's personal, right? But actually, as we begin to think about things, we realize that all that stuff, or a lot of that stuff that we thought was personal, part of our enlightenment path is to realize actually it's a lot more impersonal than we thought, right? And that realization of some of the impersonality is actually absolutely critical for the next stage of our evolution. Fantastic. And as Gurdjieff said that in order to go from a caterpillar, right, to a butterfly, you have to become soup in the middle, right? So becoming soup is, right, I've got to go from that everything's personal, right, to, right, impersonal. Now then, what happens then is what emerges out of this realization of soup is the butterfly, right? What emerges out of the impersonal is the transpersonal. So the personal, as we understand in its limited form, right, is a dumbing down, it's a smalling, using it as a verb, of the divine. Because the divine is infinitely more personal, more intimate than what we call the personal, not less. Right? And let's be really clear here. Right? So one step in the evolution of divinity is the divine's no longer personal, the divine is a process, right, or a principle. That's a critical, right, because a principle is everywhere in a way that when we imagine the idea of personal, the personal is not. So as the divine begins as kind of personal, then becomes a principle process, and then as we evolve, right, the principle process and the personal merge together into a larger integral embrace, and we begin to experience our relationship with the divine both as our relationship to a principle process. We want to align with the principle process, and we experience that vast cosmos, that vast infinite cosmos, that evolutionary ecstatic God impulse, right, unfolding in the world is not merely process, as Hegel, right, thought it to be, and produced all the shadows of communism, because when the divine becomes a process, then you kill a lot of people for the sake of the process, you lose your intimate personal, you lose the intimate love, right? And so the divine is both principle, right, process on the one hand, and personal on the other hand. And it's a complete epistemological mistake, meaning it's a complete mistake both in realization, right, in enlightenment, and in understanding, right, to actually reduce divinity to a process, right, and reduce divinity, right, personal minus instead of personal plus. So, the mythic God is personal before our understanding of the divine as process and principle. Right? The post-mythic, right? The post, right? The full realization of divinity, right, comes from, or the fullest that we're able to attain at this stage of our evolutionary development comes from something which is beyond process and beyond personal. So the nicest way to say it would be, right, is or maybe not the nicest way, but the way that comes down to this particular moment. Let's not create a hierarchy of niceness at this moment, right? Right? But a really nice way to say it, would be, is if you take, all of the infinite intelligence, right, that is the eros that drives the world from within and pulls it, right, towards its evolutionary unfolding, that precise impulse, that's the second person. That's the experience, right, of being seen. And it has enormous implications on every level. So, for example, right, a teacher could say, my job is an impersonal teaching. I'm an impersonal teacher. I'm going to show people everything they think is personal is impersonal. It's a beautiful thing to do. And I'm going to bust the ego. That's one moment, holy, sacred, beautiful. We bow before it in teaching. Then there's a second moment in teaching. And the second moment is one that I'm, in my unique self, personally called to, which is I'm going to love, I'm going to see, right, the person in front of me so clearly and love them so deeply, right, that by being seen and by being loved, the contraction of their ego actually releases, right? So that's another moment. And so we have to always stay, right, in the dance between the impersonal and the personal and reach for the higher integral embrace of both of them and not get lost in either shadows of the personal, which might be the mythic Santa Claus God, or the shadows of the impersonal, which is the process communist God that kills 17 million collective farmers. Our integral evolutionary embrace is when we actually can re-embrace devotion. That's what we call in integral thinking, right? We call it the second face of the divine. And that second face of the divine comes together, right, with, right, and merges with in this higher embrace, right, the process.